Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. If you haven't already done so, please make sure the volume of this podcast is set perfectly to your listening enjoyment. Please take your seat, whether that's on the treadmill, car, sofa, or bed, and buckle in for the last trip. My name is Jamie Beebe, and I'll be your tour guide, recreating someone's last days in paradise. On behalf of myself and everyone behind the scenes, please enjoy the Last Trip podcast. And because nobody likes a long flight to get to where they want to be, let's prepare for takeoff. Glen Austin Oldfield, who was known by his middle name Austin, left Louisville, Kentucky for the Gifford Pinchot National Forest in southwest Washington state for a 2-week solo camping trip. Just before entering the forest, he sent a message to his fiancée to let her know he would be off-grid and he'd contact her again on October 1st, 2015. But she never heard from Austin again. On October 2nd, she reported him missing, and although there was an extensive search, no clues were found. But that's not where Austin's story ends, and many people believe Austin is still alive. What happened to Austin Oldfield, and where is he now? We're heading deep into the Gifford Pinchot National Forest for today's case. It's a vast and diverse forest located in southern Washington state. And this forest is huge. It's approximately 1.32 million acres and stretches from the Columbia River in the south to Mount Rainier National Park in the north. The terrain is rugged mountains, volcanic peaks, dense forests, alpine meadows, and pristine rivers. One of the most prominent features is Mount St. Helens, which is an active volcano that famously erupted in 1980. Wildlife in the forest include elk, black bears, mountain lions, deer, and a variety of small mammals and bird species. Human habitation there dates back thousands of years to indigenous tribes such as the Cowlitz and Yakima, who have historical ties to the land. And today, people go there to hike, camp, fish, hunt, mountain bike, and ride horses. The forest is accessible from several major cities, including Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, making it a popular destination for outdoor enthusiasts from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. One of the more popular trails and destinations is the Pacific Crest Trail, or the PCT, which actually stretches from Mexico to Canada and runs right through the Gifford Pinchot for about 147 miles. Now, if you're headed to the Pacific Northwest and the Gifford Pinchot, there are some landmarks you don't want to miss. The Johnston Ridge Observatory offers panoramic views of Mount St. Helens crater and the surrounding blast zone. It's also a great spot to learn about the 1980 eruption. The Ape Caves are the longest continuous lava tubes in the United States, and people can actually go spelunking in there. They were formed about 2,000 years ago during a basaltic lava flow from a vent on the southern flank of Mount St. Helens. The outer layer of the lava cooled and solidified while the molten lava continued to flow beneath, eventually draining away and leaving a hollow tube. The tubes were discovered in 1947 by a logger and then named after the Mount St. Helens Apes, which was a local Boy Scout group that helped to explore the caves. Takalak Lake is a gorgeous lake with a campground that offers excellent views of Mount Adams and is a great spot for fishing, hiking, and photography. There's also Trout Lake, which is a charming community located near the base of Mount Adams. It offers numerous outdoor activities like kayaking, fishing, and exploring the lava tubes, as well as amazing local cafes, a general store, and seasonal farmers markets. If you're into waterfalls, the Lewis River Falls should be on your list. The area offers scenic trails for hiking and spots for picnicking, along with a series of stunning waterfalls, the lower, middle, and upper Lewis River Falls. A popular spot for day hikes and backpacking is Snowgrass Flats, which is a beautiful alpine meadow filled with wildflowers. The Grove of the Patriarchs is located near the forest's northern border in the Mount Rainier National Park and is an easy trail that winds through a forest of giant ancient trees. Now, if you're in the area but hiking and camping aren't your thing, or you need a break from the wilderness, the Yakima Valley is nearby and known for its wine production. They offer tours and tastings throughout the valley, and you'll still be able to take in all the breathtaking views. There are some great little communities nestled up to the forest if you're planning a visit in the area. Portland, Oregon is a really fun city to visit. I recently went there and loved the area. Plenty of adorable shops, lots of great food, microbreweries, and a small town feel. Carson, Washington is known for the Carson Hot Springs, the perfect place to relax after a couple days of camping and hiking. Packwood, Washington is known for its antique shops, farmers market, and the Packwood Flea Market, held during Memorial Day and Labor Day weekend. Now, that's my kind of shopping trip for sure. And if you're looking for a more lively town, Hood River, Oregon is known for its wide range of restaurants, breweries, wineries, and shops. Austin Oldfield was headed to the Gifford Pinchot National Forest for 2 weeks of camping in isolation, away from the modern world. And although it appears he found what he was looking for, things went terribly wrong.
Are you into podcasts about missing people, cold cases, and true crime? I'm Renee Robertson, host and creator of the podcast Missing in the Carolinas. The show is an original podcast that features people you might have heard of, such as Heather Elvis, who went missing from South Carolina in December of 2013, and others you might not have heard of, like Enrique Roman Martinez, who disappeared while camping with fellow soldiers from Fort Bragg at the Cape Lookout National Seashore Memorial Day weekend 2020. I also dig deep into the news archives for stories like Diane Gabriel, the North Carolina real estate agent who vanished after making an appointment to look at a house on the shores of Lake Norman in 1983. Look for Missing in the Carolinas wherever you get your podcasts.
Austin was 39 years old when he went missing. He was described by his family as being a bit quirky and out there. He had a very high IQ and was even offered a college scholarship to Duke University when he was just 12 years old, which he refused. He hated school and ultimately decided college was just not for him. After high school, Austin held many technology-related jobs, but his first love was music, and he was very talented. He could play any instrument by ear and applied his knowledge of electronics to alter his guitar sounds and build his own amplifiers. Music was everything to him, and he always had a guitar within arm's length. He often played music in bars and with friends in his free time. He was a nonconformist and had no interest in the material trappings of Middle America, but rather he was more into the alternative hippie lifestyle. Austin was a very friendly person, and he had a lot of close friends, but he also loved to be alone. He loved the outdoors, and his friends said he could walk for days on end tirelessly. Camping alone deep in the woods was a normal thing for Austin to do. He would often hike and camp on solo trips throughout Kentucky and the surrounding states. The year prior to this camping trip, Austin had quit drinking, smoking, and any drug use, according to his mother. He was more interested in a healthier lifestyle and switched to drinking health drinks, juicing, and taking vitamins. He had been looking forward to and planning this solo camping trip for about a year before he left because he absolutely loved the Pacific Northwest. He was even thinking of relocating himself and his fiancée to Washington or Oregon. He targeted an area in Washington state very close to the Pacific Crest Trail, about 30 miles from a well-known hiker's landmark called Bridge of the Gods. He wanted a rugged and isolated area where he could spend those 2 weeks in total isolation. And this is the same hiking landmark where Cheryl Strayed ended her Pacific Crest Trail hike. In her book Wild, From Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail, where she documented her life-changing 1,100-mile journey. And this was also made into a movie with the lead character played by Reese Witherspoon. It was an amazing film, and if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest it. Her physical journey paralleled an equally daunting emotional journey, so be prepared to shed a few tears. In a similar fashion, the idea that Austin was on a quest for new beginnings when he set out on his solo camping trip has been echoed many times by those close to him. He was looking for a fresh perspective. And it might have even been a little more than that, as many have said he was on more of a vision quest. A traditional vision quest originates from the indigenous cultures in North America, where individuals seek guidance and purpose through isolation and fasting in nature, while a more modern version often blends these elements with contemporary spiritual and countercultural practices. Many times, people use hallucinogens in these types of quests, like mushrooms or LSD. Austin did have a solid understanding of mushrooms, and there were some questions of whether he had some with him or planned to pick some while he was camping. Many of his friends believed he had every intent of ingesting these mushrooms during his 2 weeks alone in the wilderness. There were also some questions about why Austin chose the location and timing that he did for this trip. His camping trip coincided with a Rainbow Regional Family Gathering, which took place about 25 miles away from his campsite from September 19th to the 28th. Austin hadn't told anyone that he planned to join the gathering or that he even knew about it, but he had attended other rainbow gatherings in the past and knew a few people in the area that regularly attended them. The Rainbow Family, also known as the Rainbow Family of Living Light, is a loose affiliation of individuals committed to principles of peace, love, harmony, and community. The group is known for organizing gatherings that promote these values, and they often take place in natural settings, like national forests. The family began in the early 1970s from the counterculture and hippie movements of the 1960s. They promote ideals of nonviolence, communal living, environmental consciousness, and spiritual diversity. They operate without a formal hierarchy or centralized leadership, and decisions are made through consensus during council meetings, often conducted in a circle to emphasize equality and inclusion. And because it isn't a formal organization, anyone who shares the group's values can identify as part of the Rainbow Family. Overall, the Rainbow Family embodies a utopian vision of community, aiming to create a space where people can live in harmony with each other and the natural world, even if only temporary. Now, I've actually been to one of these gatherings. It was held in the Gifford National Forest in Oregon in 1997, and it was absolutely spectacular. I rode in a Volkswagen bus with my boyfriend at the time, all the way from Iowa, and it was an awesome experience that I will definitely never forget. It was estimated that between 20 and 30,000 people descended into the national forest and essentially lived off the land for a few weeks that year. There were kitchens built to feed everyone, there was dancing, chanting, singing, and lots of tie-dye. As you enter, everyone says, "Welcome home," and you really feel like you've come home, especially as an 18-year-old girl feeling a little lost. No one is turned away, and the whole idea is to love each other and take care of the earth. So I can totally see why Austin would be interested in the rainbow gatherings. Whether he had planned to visit this one while he was in the area is something we may never know. Let's dive into the timeline in this case.
Hi, I'm Sean.
And I'm John.
We're the hosts of Sins and Survivors, a Las Vegas true crime podcast. Each week, we cover current cases in the news, as well as cold cases and missing persons, but there's a twist.
Our focus is primarily on crimes with a domestic violence component while remaining centered on the victims and the families they leave behind, and also providing victims with resources.
We're focused on Las Vegas, but as we'll remind you in every episode, what happens here happens everywhere. Visit sinsandsurvivors.com to listen now.
Austin's trip started about 2 weeks before he finally ended up in the wilderness. He traveled cross-country from Kentucky to Washington State in an old black beat-up Saturn. He visited friends along the way who all said he was in good spirits and excited about his solo adventure in the woods. Surprising to most, he didn't bring his beloved dog Flash. He had Flash since he was a tiny baby that fit in the palm of his hand, and they went everywhere together. Austin and Flash had a connection like many people do not have with their pet, and friends rarely saw Austin without Flash. He even built a rack on his motorcycle so the dog could come with him everywhere. Friends and family were surprised and later questioned why Flash wasn't with him. But it was a last-minute decision that his fiancée said he later regretted, and texted her about it after he was already 300 miles away. He maintained frequent contact with his young daughter Magnolia, his fiancée, and many friends throughout his drive to the Northwest. When he finally arrived in the area, he stopped at a Goodwill in Woodland, Washington on September 17, 2015, and he sent a text to his fiancée along with a photo of himself, explaining that he would be entering the forest soon and would return to civilization on October 1st. That he would be completely off-grid and would not contact her again until then. He also sent her a link to the song Coming Home by Leon Bridges to let her know he'd be coming home soon. He was hopeful about his future, and he saw this trip as the beginning of a new life. And with that, he entered the woods. There was a heavy rain at the start of his trip, and it rained for the first couple of days. This was also the start of elk season for bow hunting, and on September 19th, just 2 days into his camping trip, 2 bow hunters came across Austin in the woods. He identified himself and told the hunters he was lost. They gave him a bottle of water and offered to lead him to the road, but after several paces toward the road, Austin ran off in the opposite direction toward the riverbed. The hunters described Austin as seeming lost, disoriented, and that he appeared to be under the influence of hallucinogens. They also said he seemed very thirsty and did not have a car or any hiking equipment with him. The hunters called the police once they got back to civilization to let them know someone could be lost in the woods. But at that point, no one knew Austin could even be missing. He wasn't supposed to check in until October 1st. And when October 1st rolled around, he never checked in with his fiancée, so she sounded the alarms on October 2nd. She filed a missing person report in both Kentucky and Washington and let his family know that he had never checked in, and she was worried something might have happened to him. But unfortunately, no one had any idea of exactly where to look for Austin. So a formal search could not be launched until someone found his campsite or car to have a starting point on where to look for him. On October 13th, investigators located his 1996 Saturn near Lone Butte inside of the forest and tied the sighting of the disoriented man from the hunters back to Austin. And that's when the search officially began. When his car was found, it was parked in a hidden area off the road. It had actually been seen at the same location 2 weeks prior, but was not reported at that time because no one knew it was part of a missing persons investigation. The battery was dead, and the doors were locked with the key in the ignition. The rear driver's side door was not latched, though, so it was possible to open that door. Those who were close to Austin said he always carried 2 sets of keys, including his car key, on him. So the key being in the ignition was not out of the ordinary. There was food and water inside the car along with his iPad, although interestingly, his iPad was wrapped in tinfoil. But there were no signs of foul play in or around his car. His campsite was nearby, but it wasn't much of one. There was a sleeping bag and a tarp tossed over some branches to provide shade, but no tent. The weather had been warmer when he pitched camp, and it appeared to be more of a day camp, and there were no indications that he had built any fires. It was thought he may have planned to scout the area before repositioning his camp elsewhere. A book was open, laying next to his sleeping bag, as if he were going to return momentarily and turn the next page. There were candy bar wrappers in his sleeping bag, and you could see where he was trying to dry his clothes after the rain by laying them on top of his car. Pretty much everything except the clothes he had been wearing in the last photo he sent to his fiancée was found at his campsite. And he only had the very basic camping equipment: It was more of someone who just wanted to be out with nature rather than someone who was going to hike to a specific point or was adequately prepared to be in the wilderness alone for 2 weeks. He didn't have any type of maps or anything like that with him, but it was likely he had a flashlight that was not found at the camp or the car, so it's assumed it was with him when he disappeared. Once his car and campsite were found, Austin's sister Pamela and her husband went to the area to help with the search. They spoke extensively with the Skamania County Sheriff's Department, met with members of the search and rescue team, stayed in close contact with his fiancée in Kentucky, reviewed maps, visited his campsite, talked with locals, and posted flyers everywhere. More than 100 search and rescue volunteers spent the next 5 days searching the woods. They had search dogs, rope teams, and ground teams, scouring every square inch. But there was no way they could search the whole forest. Austin's location was approximately 20 miles from the Pacific Crest Trail, which runs 2,650 miles from Mexico to Canada through California, Oregon, and Washington, and goes squarely through the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. So there was a possibility that he was somewhere along that trail. The search teams went out 1 mile from the location of his car and camp, but they didn't find a single clue. And that's extremely unusual. Normally, they'd find some sign of the missing person: clothing, tracks, wrappers, just something. And because search and rescue didn't find any evidence or clues and couldn't uncover any additional information about Austin's whereabouts, they called the search off on October 18th, just 5 days after finding his car. At this point, investigators assumed Austin died in the woods, and hunters would eventually come across his body. That was until 16 months later, in January of 2017. This is when new information surfaced that Austin had actually been driven away from Lone Butte and his campsite in late September or early October of 2015. He flagged down a father and daughter who were in a truck, and they drove him east to the Indian Heaven berry fields. And this was very close to the town of Trout Lake, Washington, which is about 8 miles away from his camp. But it brought him much closer to the rainbow gathering that was taking place just north of Trout Lake. The father and daughter described the man as seemingly delirious. He told them that he needed to get to a body of water to meet up with friends, and that he was chasing a red balloon with a magical ship under it. And this whole interaction went mostly unnoticed, because the father and daughter had no idea anyone was looking for the odd man they picked up hitchhiking. It was only later that they stumbled across the Facebook page Austin's sister set up looking for him that they realized they had given him a ride out of the woods. But how did they know it was Austin? Well, because he was acting strangely, at the end of the interaction, the daughter snapped a quick photo of the man from the back as he was getting off the flatbed of their truck. And a photo from the back would normally be difficult to prove who it was. But Austin was still wearing the same exact shirt he had on when he sent the photo to his fiancée from the Goodwill right before entering the forest. And this shirt had distinct sleeves. It was 100% a positive ID of Austin leaving his campsite and leaving the woods. This was a game changer for his family and gave them new hope that Austin was still alive. But it also meant that he could be anywhere by this time. He could have ended up with the rainbow gathering and was still traveling with them. He could have gone into a town and gotten another ride to literally anywhere. Or he could have gone back into the woods. What they know for sure is that he didn't go back to his car or his campsite. His sister Pam renewed her efforts to continue searching for her brother, fully believing he was still alive. She reached out to the Rainbow family, but most said they didn't think he arrived at their gathering that year. She continued to post flyers and get the word out so people would continue to look for him. Later in 2017, there was another potential sighting of Austin riding a city bus in the Tri-Cities, Washington. His mom, Billy, went there with photos of her son and a folder filled with notes about his disappearance. She stopped at the Tri-City Union Gospel Mission, but turned up no signs of Austin. While some people said he seemed familiar, she was told he just looked similar to other people. The person on the bus might not have been Austin, but his family followed up on every single lead, although there were no more promising sightings after that. Now, it's been 9 years since Austin went into the woods, and he's still missing. Let's go over some theories on what may have happened to Austin Oldfield after a word from our sponsors. According to the Skamania County Sheriff, more than 90% of those who get lost find their own way out or are found by search and rescue, although not always found alive. And the sheriff's office presented 3 distinct possibilities to Austin's family as to what they think happened to him. First, that he somehow died in the woods. An accident, wildlife, hypothermia, dehydration, or possibly he ate poisonous berries or mushrooms. Any number of things that he could have died from in those woods. And the sheriff's office sees this as the most likely explanation to why Austin is still missing. The only problem with this theory is that there were absolutely no clues to say he was still in the woods. And no one has ever found any sign of him, even after all these years. And there was a positive sighting that at one point Austin did get a ride out of the woods. The second theory presented was that he actually went to the area to commit suicide. No one that knows Austin believes this to be the case. Also, he left no indication behind that he was planning anything of the sort. There was no note, he left his things looking as if he was coming right back, and everyone said he was looking forward to coming home. And the third theory was that he faked his own death to start a new life somewhere else. But again, no one close to him believes he would simply walk away and assume a new identity. Almost everyone that knows Austin believes he made it out of the woods and he's still alive somewhere, possibly not knowing who he is. When Austin disappeared, Nikia Furman, a local in the area with a YouTube channel called Rat and Cat Search and Survival, took on the search for Austin. He spent years tracking down leads, doing interviews, and searching on foot through the woods and elsewhere. And he's gained some valuable information, believing that Austin is alive out there somewhere. He claimed he spoke to a family that were housing Austin at one point, who then suspiciously retracted their statements. He also found that on July 29, 2016, and September 14, 2016, videos were mysteriously posted to an online account that was only shared with Austin and his ex-wife. One was a link to a B movie called Lemon Tree Pass, an Australian movie about a car that broke down in the woods and some kids were chased by an evil spirit who was trying to get them. And the other was a link to the movie Ice Age, but it was in French. While the account could have been hacked, Nikia believes Austin was suffering from some kind of a psychotic break from stress or drug use and experiencing delusions and paranoia. The first video link that was posted was similar to Austin's experience of his car breaking down and possibly thinking he was being chased by creatures. Austin's ex-wife commented on the videos, asking Austin where he was and if he was okay, but never received a response. Instead, in December of that year, the videos were just as mysteriously deleted. Nikia backs up his theory of a psychotic break because police found his iPad wrapped in tinfoil in his car. And a few months before his trip, one of his friends said they had been doing mushrooms together. But Austin was experiencing an exceptionally bad trip, thinking he was seeing creatures that were after him. His friend believes that if Austin was again doing hallucinogens, he may have experienced some kind of psychotic break that he couldn't come back from. While I think this theory could be a little far-fetched, it's not completely out of the box. I do think it's entirely possible that Austin had a psychotic break and is still out there. I don't think Austin is running from his past life to start a new one, because there's just no reason for it. He had no criminal record, no one was chasing him, and he didn't owe large sums of money. He was not the type of person who would leave his friends, family, children, or even his dog to just run off. If he is alive and knows who he is, I think there's a possibility he could be somewhere within the Rainbow family. They have been known to cover for people and keep people safe who don't want to be found. I definitely want to believe that Austin is out there somewhere. but now it's been 9 years. I'd like to believe if he was suffering from some kind of mental issue, he would have gotten help by now. And even if he wanted to start a new life, I think once he realized how many people have been searching for and missing him all these years, he would have reached out by now. Even with all the time that's passed, I'm hoping Austin's family finds him, one way or another. Is the Gifford Pinchot a safe place to visit? It definitely is, but you need to be fully prepared. Do your research and learn about the area you plan to be in, including the weather conditions, trail difficulty, and any potential hazards. Check to see if you need permits. Most of that area does need a permit for camping, hiking, and other activities. They're usually at the trailhead, easy to get, and free. Whether you're headed out for an afternoon hike or a backpacking trip, you need to be prepared for safety before heading into the forest. A few of the top essentials you should bring include some kind of navigation, like a map, compass, or GPS. And think ahead, because your phone may not get service while you're in the woods, so be sure you have everything offline and on paper, just in case you also run out of batteries. Bring extra clothes. The weather in the Gifford Pinchot is often very wet, cold, and can change quickly. Along those lines, don't forget protection from the sun, like hats, sunglasses, and sunscreen. Always bring extra food. Something easy like trail mix or protein bars, just in case you need them. Bring extra water and a way to treat water in case you run out of what you bring or can't carry everything you need. Bring a headlamp or flashlight and extra batteries because you never know when you need them, but definitely don't want to be without them. First aid supplies, matches and a lighter, a knife, multi-tool, whistle, and some type of emergency shelter should also be packed with you. Now, what kind of dangers might you run into? There are black bears in the forest, and you don't want an encounter with one. Keep your campsite clean to ward off bears. Store all food and scented items in bear-proof containers or in vehicles covered and out of sight. Do not approach or attempt to feed bears. If you do encounter a bear, keep a safe distance and slowly back away. If a bear approaches, scare it away by shouting, waving your arms, throwing stones, or deploying bear spray. But no matter what, do not run. Do not run from a bear. If you encounter a cougar, remember that attacks on humans are extremely rare. They are usually secretive and shy, and you won't normally see one. But if you do, stop and pick up any small children or animals you have with you. Face the cougar and make yourself look as big as you can. Shout and yell and slowly back away. Be assertive, and if the cougar does attack, fight back. Whatever you do not run. If a cougar attacks, fight back, do not run. Elk are generally not aggressive toward humans and are relatively peaceful animals. But during breeding season and calving season, they may become aggressive. If an elk approaches or shows signs of aggression, like lowering its head, pawing the ground, or making loud calls, just back away slowly and don't turn your back on the animal. Remain calm and quiet and avoid sudden movements or loud noises that might startle it. And now there are quite a few people that believe Bigfoot or Sasquatch resides in the Pacific Northwest. While I can't say either way, the amount of documented sightings are in the thousands. One noticeable link in every sighting is that no one has reported being attacked or injured by one. Most believe that they are very timid and wary, preferring to retreat or hide when near humans. They are also supposed to be highly intelligent and curious. They do not appear to be hunting or wanting to hurt humans in any way. So my suggestion, if you run into one in the woods, stay calm and make sure you get a good video. If you're an avid listener of true crime podcasts, you know a lot of people have a tendency to go missing in national forests. According to an online study, the number one reason people get lost is because they go off the trail. Now, that sounds pretty logical to me, so stay on the trail. And don't go alone. I know it's great to be in the forest, totally alone, but is it worth getting lost or hurt or worse? Hike with a buddy. Even if you take separate trails, then plan to have a meeting place at a certain time, it's a much better idea than going out totally alone. Although Austin had a check-in at the end of the 2 weeks, no one knew exactly when he went missing or exactly where he went missing from. Valuable time was lost. The search didn't start until weeks after Austin was in trouble. I can't help but think if the search had started sooner, even on the 19th when he ran into the hunters, he could be with his family today. So remember, no matter where you're traveling, make sure you inform someone about your plans before going anywhere. Tell someone reliable where you're going and what you'll be doing and when to expect you back. And my number one tip to staying alive on vacation is to pay attention to your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it isn't. Glen Austin Oldfield was 39 years old when he went missing. He was a white male, 5 feet 6 inches tall, about 160 pounds, long, unkempt brown hair, blue eyes, and a long beard. He has scars on his right arm from a motorcycle accident in his early 20s. He was wearing denim bib overalls and possibly a red plaid shirt or a jacket with a red plaid lining. He typically wore a silver ring with gold plating on the middle finger of his left hand. He may have been wearing glasses or contacts. He was driving a black 1996 Saturn with Kentucky plates 378PHX, which was found undrivable near his campsite. He went missing in the Gifford Pinchot National Forest sometime before October 2, 2015, although there is positive evidence he left the area and has not been seen since. Austin would be 48 years old now, and may not know who he is after suffering a psychotic break. Anyone with information about Austin's whereabouts is asked to call the Skamania County Sheriff's Office at 509-427-9490 or email searchforoustinoldfield@gmail.com. And finally, remember to leave a review and rate this podcast 5 stars if you like the show, or hell, even if you don't. But either way, feel free to let me know what you think. Please follow The Last Trip on Instagram at The Last Trip Crime Pod and subscribe on Patreon to support the show. You'll get extra research, videos, photos, and updates, and even learn more about my personal travels. That's patreon.com/The Last Trip Podcast. I'm Jamie Beebe, bringing you your last trip and signing off until the next one. Thanks for listening.